The only thing more complicated than the new Tax Act 2025 laws is the relationship between the people and the tax authorities or government. For years, we've lived with, a massive trust deficit, a gap fueled by complex jargon, secret code legislation, or a lack of real-world education. Unfortunately, these new tax laws have made that gap even feel wider for the average Nigerian. Welcome to Tax Cage, and I'm your host, Hello Ring. On this segment, we usually analyze the pulse of the fiscal industry, but today we're measuring something deeper. We're addressing the very obvious gap that exists between the tax authorities and the taxpayers, and critically exploring the concrete plans and vision needed to bridge it. Today's theme is simple but profound: the vision for closing the gap. To dive deeper into this topic, we have with us here in the studio two architects who not only understand this gap, but have designed the ground plan for bridging it. These are two individuals who have operated at the very center of fiscal management and are now the founders and driving force behind Tax TV. Please join me as we welcome Mr. Hassan Issa and Mr. Kachi Onumajuru. Welcome to Tax TV.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. All right. So to get today started, we'll just start with an icebreaker. So for you, Mr. Hassan, you've had quite a journey in your career, and what word would you use to characterize your whole career industry or your whole career experience over the years?
Well, if I am to use one word, I'll say transformative. Transformative, because over a decade ago, since I've been in this field, I've watched tax become from a mere conversation that only HNIs and multinationals or government are involved, to now seeing a lot of individuals and SMEs being part of the tax business. Okay. Back a decade ago, there was still the influx of monies from the oil revenue, so government was not really much focused on tax. It is then that this conversation started. One day, dwindling oil revenue started going down, and this tax conversation started, and that's when government became serious, even at the subnational level as well as the national level. So over this decade that has passed, the whole tax and revenue ecosystem has become transformative. I've seen it change from not everybody knowing about the conversation to a bit of transformation in the sector. So I'll say transformative.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that. And for you, Mr. Kachi, what would you say is that one story that has really stood out for you in your whole career, both whether it's in tax or out of tax?
Okay, thank you very much, Halal. The reality would be that it will be difficult to condense or put together the experiences of over a decade plus into a single story. Every day we are challenged, every day we are inspired, every day we see reasons why we continue to do what we do. But for me, our story would be a story of solution delivery, a story of being resourceful, a story that commands a transformative leadership, that distills transformative leadership into specific actions that deliver value to the people that we work with on a daily basis. As you might know, part of what we do is to cut across just a couple of subnationals, and our job specifically is to be able to deliver value. And for us at Tax Television, what we try to do is to support people, government organizations, high network individuals, taxpayers and tax entities with those solutions that is able to deliver value. Because we live in a world where there are a lot of inefficiencies, and in fact, those inefficiencies has most times been celebrated. We live in a world where mediocrity is the order of the day. We live in a world where people just want to, stick to old guns. But the reality is that we have decided to carve a niche for ourselves. We have decided to create a path for ourselves that is driven by passion, is driven by the need to solve problems, is driven by the need to be different in a world where mediocrity is now the order of the day. So just to address specifically the highlights of your question, there is not one story. Our story has been that of persistence, preservation, perseverance, commitment to purpose, understanding what is required per time, and delivering exceptionally, to the demands of our daily job.
Interesting. All right, so you heard it right here on Tax Gauge. Before we dive straight into the conversation, we'll take a short break. Welcome back to Tax Gauge. We're having right here with us in the studio the founders of Tax TV, and we're here to talk about bridging the gap that exists between the taxpayers and the government or tax authorities. All right, so coming back to the conversation, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Kachi. Looking at Tax TV, could you help us explicitly tell us what is the vision behind Tax TV? What is the driving force? What led to the birth of Tax TV? So when people talk about how certain ideas came to be, they say, "Oh, I was in the restroom and I got a light bulb idea." Was it that for Tax TV, or was it a build up? What's the story?
I'm one of those guys who believe that there is vision for everything.
Interesting.
I'm one of those people who also thrive on the concept of vision. In fact, without vision, we'll just be gaslighting ourselves.
Okay.
Without vision, we'll be losing direction. So for us, the vision for Tax TV is very clear. It is born out of the fact that there is a lot of ignorance in the space. There's a lot of disinformation in the space. There is a lot of lack of appreciation of the details of what makes the law tick and thief within the space. The reality again is that people are masquerading themselves as experts, given the complexities and ambiguities created by the new tax environment. But in the true sense of it, these guys are not experts in the true word of it, in the true sense of what an expert should be.
Exactly.
But the reality again is that given the fact that people who should be speaking are not speaking, so that created a void for people who have limited understanding, limited appreciation of what the expectation should be, to step into the ring and begin to create even further deepening the divide, the knowledge gap that exists. So for us at Tax Television, the vision is very clear: to be that one major source, a reliable source that provides you all of your tax information that is verifiable, reputable, referenceable, resourceful, to the point that it demystifies any kind of ambiguity that may exist within the context of the new tax environment. You will recall that as part of what we have done previously was to be able to empirically drive and test out this vision. At the last count, we surveyed over 100 young people, and we found out that while there is a force, while there is a huge awareness in terms of what the law could mean and what it could potentially mean, but in terms of the substance was actually lacking. So you find that a population, a demographic that understood or that knows on a superficial level what a tax ID is, but don't understand how to use a tax ID. You find that a population that understands what profit is, but also fail to understand or do not understand what turnover is. I was speaking to somebody who given the pedigree, you could literally say that this person should have a firm understanding of what it means. But unfortunately, you will see that they are not able to distinguish between what compliance deadlines exist for different classifications of taxes. You will be able to see that people are not able to understand their responsibility within the new tax environment. You will see that people are not able to understand and appreciate what roles they are able to perform within the new tax environment. They don't even understand how to hold government accountable, the processes of holding government accountable. And in terms, these are the things, the accumulation of all of these factors bettered what we call today as tax television. The whole idea is that we want to be that one singular reference point that provides tax education on a continuous basis, that provides tax awareness on a continuous basis, that is able to demystify the bogus tax concepts, the bogus processes around tax administration to the layman, to the ordinary man on the street. And we have created certain segments, specialized segments that should be able to handle some of these conversations. So for instance, we have a segment that is called the street tax, that focuses on understanding, measuring what the street man is saying about taxes, their reaction, their understanding, their appreciation of what they are supposed to be doing within the context of the new environment. We have another section that measures what does this tax law mean for me. It tells you it in specific terms with clear references with the law. We're able to demystify the sections, the relevant sections of the law through our expert-led conversations to be able to channel some level of knowledge and intelligence to our audience. So essentially speaking, what we're saying is that Tax TV was bettered for a purpose. It was better to solve a problem. That problem is the obvious lack of tax information, given the complex, ambiguous tax environment that we find ourselves today. It is ambiguous. Take, for instance, the tax law today was written into four specific tax laws, right? Cumulatively speaking, those tax laws compound to about over 500-page documents.
Oh yes,
right? Each of them have specific sections and subsections, and each of them are done, created in a way that creates some level of confusion. I will tell you why. There is a legal drafting strategy that was deployed where there is no correlative sequence of action. So when you read chapter 1, you would ordinarily want to be able to proceed to chapter 2 or section 2 to be able to understand what chapter 2 says.
Okay.
But unfortunately, what happens within the context of what has been done is that you will have to go to a chapter 10 or a chapter 20 to be able to make sense of what has been said in chapter 1. And those levels of distortion, even though it's not unintended, but create some level of ambiguity, create some level of disconnect that requires some level of explanation to the average man. So these are some of the things that we have been nurtured and structured to be able to deliver, to the effect that we want to be that reference point that delivers tax awareness, tax sensitization, tax advocacy, that is able to demystify the complex nature of all of the tax programs and undertakings and underwritings, to the average man. Essentially, that's why we're set up.
Interesting. So Tax TV is set up to bridge that whole gap that exists.
Exactly.
Beautiful. But I just want you to throw more light on something. You made mention of some legalese that was incorporated in the writing of the new tax laws. Could you speak more on that? And most especially, do you think that this legalese employed is deliberate, or do you think it's just a coincidence? And in comparison to the laws that existed prior to this one, do you think that this law is more approachable? When I mean approachable for a common man, is it easier for a common man to interact with it? What's your take on this?
Okay, like I said previously, some of these things are unintended consequences of some policy actions.
Oh, okay.
Right? What we usually see when we do legal drafting is that there is a pattern to legal drafting.
Okay.
The whole idea is to be able to give some level of sophistication
to
the final outcome or output of what is being drafted. But in driving sophistication, we will not be able to sacrifice appreciation on the altar of sophistication. Now, these laws are made for people, not the people for the law. Is that not?
Yeah.
What we usually see is that given the nature and the pattern of this legal drafting, we further deepen and discourage people from reading the law, because you are not able to connect a chapter 1 to a chapter 5. You know, the way you read your textbooks is that you move from the known to the unknown, is that not?
Yeah.
You move from a chapter 1 to a chapter 2 to a chapter 3 to a chapter 4.
And there's a sequence of
and there's a
knowledge.
sequence that you're able to trace. But what we have found in terms of how these laws are written, and without any particular, you know, without prejudice to this administration, this is the standard way to be able to write laws. But our question is, why should we continue to go this path?
Exactly.
Because we have seen that this path creates some level of discontent, fosters, you know, disinformation, misinformation, because you are not able to trace certain things in a sequential form that aids your understanding. The laws are made for people, not the people for the law. So what we're saying essentially is that regardless of what the law and the nature or the pattern of writing or legal drafting that has been employed, our job here at Tax TV is to be able to look through those laws through our expert-led conversations. We have trained lawyers, tax lawyers, who understand some of these rudiments, who understand how these things are correlated, who understand the connection between a particular chapter and the next chapter. And we're able to trace those chapters and deliver it to you as a listener, to our audience, in a manner that makes sense to you, relating to your real life experiences, how you're able to live them on a daily basis. So these are some of the things that we are supposed to do, and that's what we are committed to do.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Kachi. Now, crossing over to you, Mr. Hassan, you said your journey has been transformative, but speaking about the lacuna that has existed, right, what would you say is the most profound lacuna, most profound gap that exists? You could use an example, you know, something that you've realized over the years that has not changed. Over the years, you've seen that, okay, this problem has been consistent. This is not part of the transformative journey that you've experienced that has existed till date.
Well, thank you, Hello, for that question. But the issue is that there are a lot of issues that are on ground that can speak to that, even after recording somewhat progress over the decade. Like I mentioned, there's still a significant gap, of which Kachi has just mentioned how the vision was birthed. But I think one of the cardinal things that stand out for me till today is that my tax money, the illusion, or the thought among, especially within the SME, the informal sector, that my tax money doesn't work. If I pay government money, I don't see the money, I don't see it working. So there's that large misconception, of which these are one of the things that Tax TV is looking to basically address. I'll give you certain instances. You know, today, let's take the subnational, let's even put federal aside. Well, you have state hospitals. No matter what, within the informal sectors, there's a category of the populace that cannot afford to go to a private hospital. They still go to the government hospital and they get services. They go to government schools. They send their wards to government schools. They get education there. They apply on the roads within the states. It's billed by tax money. You know, the power that is being consumed today, if we're talking at a federal level, if government would actually charge the actual amount it takes to generate that power, you realize we are paying much higher than we are paying. So a lot of the infrastructures that are existing, both within the states and the nation in its entirety, these are tax-funded infrastructures. So that notion that our tax money doesn't work for us is one of the things we aim to dissuade, and that is one of challenges that exists today within the tax ecosystem. Another issue, if I may bring up, is the issue of multiple taxation. You have, within the informal sector space, the SMEs saying, oh, but I paid my tax yesterday. Why am I getting another tax? Why am I getting another tax today? We're being charged multiple taxes, not understanding that there are different taxes and levies, taxes at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local government level. So that, knowledge gap exists considerably within the informal sector and within the SME. So that's one of the things Tax TV, we aim to bridge that gap within the shortest possible time.
Yeah, and speaking of multiple taxation, I think another major problem is people understanding the differences between levies, taxes, and other things, other fees, because people think that the fees they pay in their market are taxes. Some people don't even know what the difference is. So I think that's what you're speaking about, right?
Certainly.
Interesting. All right. So speaking of Tax TV now, Mr. Kachi, we're talking about the problem Tax TV is here to fix. So would you say Tax TV is here for everyone? Is there a particular focus? Do you have a particular target in mind, or Tax TV is just here for Nigerians in general?
Okay, yeah, loosely so. We're here for everybody.
Okay.
And I want you to take that, on a loose note.
Okay.
Well, strategically speaking, we are sent for a specific demographic within the Nigerian environment.
Okay.
And why we have decided to be able to attend to this particular demographic is essentially because we noticed that there is some level of palpable disconnect between the government and this next generation demographic, the generation that we usually call the Generation Z. Today, like I've explained in other places, attention should move from existing taxpayers to the next generation of taxpayers. Why is that so? Today, these people will be the people, even though today they're not controlling the economic powerhouse of the fiscal environment. But the reality is that in another 5 years, in another 10 years, the people we know today as high net worth individuals will be phasing away. They will no longer have the economic strength to be able to command the kind of tax remittances that is required. And so therefore, there must be a conscious decision to be able to educate the next generation of persons who will step into those shoes, because no government can function without taxes.
Yeah.
I'm able to say that. It is important that we all know that no government will be able to function. The biggest infrastructures that are being developed today are developed on the basis of taxpayers' money. So it is important that we understand that. So we are sent and we are targeting, we are specifically directed to the next generation of economic powerhouse. They're not the economic powerhouse today, but they're going to be in the nearest future. Now, it is important because we want to be able to reduce the distrust. We want to be able to reduce the resentment. Because you remember what Hassan just said. People believe that government should be able to, I pay my taxes and therefore government should be able to do X, Y, Z. Standard belief, that's fine. But the reality is that there is a principle called a non-benefit principle that underscores tax administration. The non-benefit principle says that the fact that you have paid a 1 naira in tax does not mean that government needs to be able to give you an equivalence of 1 naira in service. Because there is something called national interest. There is something called global interest, national interest, right? If government begins to, channel back the tax resources generated from a particular environment, it means that some people will be disserviced. It means that some people become disadvantaged. It means that some people, because we do not all have the same economic power.
True.
So government has the liberty to be able to to receive these taxes and spend
Channels
in a manner that is able to represent fairly equitable distribution of those taxes. That's what government is supposed to be doing. So for the fact that you are remitting your taxes does not mean that government must give you equivalent services. That's one of the things that we must be able to correct, which is one of the misinformation that is also out there, right? So what we're saying is that we are targeting the next generation of taxpayers who are in the form of the Gen Zs, who are in the form of some millennials, who are in the form of the next generation after the Gen Zs, who are today not within the remit of super economic activities, who are just within the gig economy, earning X amount, small amount, meager amounts. But in another 5 years, these people will be earning more. And if we do not write or rewrite the narrative around what taxes are used for, or what your civic obligation to government is, we'll continue to experience, this generation will grow and will continue to experience a high level of evasiveness.
Exactly.
Where people will intentionally want to be able to evade taxes without minding the consequential effect on national development, on infrastructure provisioning, and in terms of government ability to provide services to its people. No government, I repeat again, no government will be able to function without taxpayers' money. And if we do not ensure that taxpayers pay their taxes currently and even in the near future, we'll be running a very huge risk. So this is why this is the people that we are particularly going after.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okache. Thank you so much. I love what you said about tax evasion, but I'll have a follow-up question for that. But before we get into that, we're going to take a very quick break, and Tax Gauge will be right back. Thank you very much. Welcome back to Tax Gauge. We are having a conversation with Mr. Kachi and Mr. Hassan here, talking about closing or bridging the gap that exists between taxpayers and the government. Right before the break, we were talking about tax evasion. So, Mr. Kachi, we're talking about tax evasion. I'd like you to go back to that topic. What is the current state of tax evasion currently in Nigeria? Do you think it's something that we need to pay attention to, or what's your take on that exactly?
I think is a cancerous situation as it is now. Today, Nigeria's tax to GDP stands at just about 13.1%.
And that's bad.
When you compare that to the African average, which is around 16%, you probably understand the narrative. And when you further do that with the European nations, which is around 34%, tax to GDP ratio is around 34%, we also understand, the depth of the worry, why it is important that we dissuade people or potential taxpayers, existing taxpayers, from the evasive culture. It is indeed eating into the earnings of government. Like I've maintained, I will say it up in time, that no government will survive without taxpayers' money. So what it means is that the culture of evasion must be stopped at all costs. Now, what are the reasons why people or taxpayers, potential taxpayers, evade taxes? People evade taxes because they do not understand their civic responsibility to government. People evade taxes because they feel that government is not giving them a commensurate value in the taxes that has been paid. And if we go back to what we just said, we established in terms of using the principle of non-benefit, that you don't expect that government will be able to give you a commensurate value, because there are a plethora of other social responsibilities that government must deliver.
Sure.
So these are one of the reasons why people evade taxes. People also evade taxes because of limitation of understanding of how to hold government accountable, when to hold government accountable, from who they should hold government accountable, because government in itself is an amphibious word. Everybody is government, if you remember. Actually, nobody wants to go to President Tinubu in this instance to go and, with that, understand that he is government. But the reality is that government is everybody that has a responsibility, the trust of the public, to deliver service, to act on behalf of the public to deliver service. So that local government chairman is government. That local government councillor is government. Civil servant. That appointee of government at the level of local governance is government. The civil servant that needs to be spoken to, who is responsible for certain area council water project, for certain area council waste collection project, is government. So the whole idea of that government is only somewhere at the top, the President Tinubu or the Senate President, will need to be demystified, because those are the kind of things that make people not to be able to pay their taxes. So generally speaking, we must discourage, through knowledge, through intelligence, the culture of evasiveness. We will not succeed as a nation if we continue to be evasive of our taxes. Our tax to GDP ratio is very low, abysmally low. It is just up till recently. The numbers I gave you is just recently. It was worse than that in the previous years. In the last 2 years, they have made a projection. The NIRS have made a projection to be able to move tax to GDP ratio to about 19%. Now, what are they doing to that effect? We want to offer ourselves as partners to government to be able to support in this crusade, in this narrative reshaping and remodeling, that you can actually pay your taxes and your taxes can actually work. That you can also pay your taxes as or in fulfillment of your responsibility to government. I've said 1,001 times that the reality is a son or a child who the parents provide shelter over does not need to frown and not greet their parents in the morning just if you're coming from an African home, just because your parents spanked you the night before, or because your parents did not provide you XYZ the day before. Your job, regardless of whether your parents did you good or bad, is that when you wake up in the morning from an African home perspective, your job is to be able to greet. Exactly. And that's the same narrative when we come to issues around taxes. It is not a function of what am I getting, which is a bad narrative. It's not a function of I'm not going to pay, which again is a bad narrative. What we should be doing, therefore, is to encourage people, partner with government, to be able to send this message to the last mile. That person in Potoskum, that person, that taxpayer in Farm Meduguri, in Jaba, in Abeokuta, in Lagos, in Imo, in anywhere across Nigeria, needs to hear this narrative. He needs to hear this changing, life-changing narrative that your taxes are important. Your taxes are what are the life wire, the lifeblood that makes government function effectively. The moment you deny government of your taxes, you are essentially saying this state nation should not continue running. You are essentially saying that I am no longer a credible son, a credible daughter of the Nigerian society. If we must make Nigeria great, like I usually say, it is a responsibility of every man and woman that calls himself a Nigerian. Therefore, you must understand your responsibility under the law and pay your taxes accordingly.
Exactly, because most of the Nigerians, when they travel abroad, you find out that they do pay their taxes. They can't evade, and they are eager to pay. But home in Nigeria here, that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem. All right. So the next question is actually for the both of you. I'd like to hear from both of you. What does success in Tax TV look like for you? What would you consider the success as success for you in Tax TV? I'd like to hear from both of you. Starting with Mr. Hassan.
Well, success for me as Tax TV will be creating a culture across the next generation, across our next the next demography we're looking at, which is now seeing that just like today, there are a lot of trending cultures within the Gen Z community, be it the social media platforms, be it the TikToks they are doing, and what have you. Success for me would love to. Today, if you look at developed nations, a student in high school knows all about tax.
Exactly.
Tax is a culture where nations have developed. So within our context today, if you ask a high schooler to tell you anything about tax, he'll probably not be able to tell you anything. At best, probably just, there's a new tax law. The new tax law will take money directly from people's bank's account. There's a lot of misinformation within that generation. So again, we're looking in the short term. Success is now saying that, okay, this set of demography is now looking into tax, is more curious about tax. And in the long term is, looking at it, one of our major issues today within the tax ecosystem in the country is the issue of compliance. We mostly meet our revenue targets within the national and the subnational.
Okay.
But compliance has been on an all-year low back to back, because we set our compliance target, but we hardly ever meet them. We set the numbers, we get the money, but the number of people complying in terms of filing on time, what they're supposed to file, what taxes they're supposed to file for. That has been significantly low. The federal has not been able to meet their compliance targets. The subnationals, I don't see any state that has been able to meet their compliance target. So with this today, I think the youth population within the country in Nigeria is far more than, you know, the older generation population.
Actually,
By the time there's a tax culture embedded within the youth population, I'm absolutely certain in the next 3-4 years, between the federal and the subnational, will be able to meet our compliance target. And until you're able to meet your compliance targets, basically you do not have a sustainable revenue system or sustainable tax system. Because if I'm not compliant, so what if a particular business folds up and the taxes they're supposed to pay me, they are not able to pay me the next year? But as long as your compliance level is optimal, you have a sustainable tax ecosystem, you're able to project more accurately within the year, you're able to know how many taxpayers exist within your ecosystem. So one of the things, our definition of success, is to be able, by bridging the knowledge gap, by bridging the misinformation gap, to be able to encourage bringing more taxpayers to the tax nets and ensure that with that tax culture embedded in this taxpayers, compliance has risen. So we'd like to monitor and see the demography of new taxpayers, both at the federal and the subnational, and that will be success for us if we're able to contribute to that.
Okay. So over to you, Mr. Kache. What will success look like?
Okay. We're clear in our minds what we want to achieve with Tax TV. It's a project that is ambitious. It is a project that will be breathtaking. It's a project that must command the attention of the public. Now, you will recall that part of the things that we said previously is that part of the strategic trust of Tax Television is that we are committed to impact measuration and sustainability. Just as Hassan said, one of the key things that will mean success to us is the fact that we are able to support in refining the narratives around the global and national misconceptions around taxes. One of those misconceptions, if I might go that way, is the fact that compliance or tax filing is only for the rich. Today, the law has made tax filing compulsory for everybody. Whether you meet the required thresholds or not, you must file. Zero filing is a filing. Gone are the days when we maintain a minimum 100 million threshold before you file. Today, government says file. And those are part of the misconceptions that must be demystified. What will mean success for us? When we rise beyond the obscurity that we find ourselves today to a place of prominence in national discourse of taxation, in the national discourse of public finance administration, where Tax TV can be reckoned with to be that contributory factor that is able to ignite a change of mindset, that is able to ignite voluntary compliance in the way that it should be, that is able to ignite that push towards a higher tax to GDP ratio, that is able to ignite something in the mind of the next generation. We cannot continue to depend on the existing generation. A country that do not have the next generation is doomed for life. We must make those conscious investments to be able to invest in our next generation, and that is why we are doing. For us, if we achieve that, that will mean great success for us. Another way to be able to define what success means for us is that we want to get to a point where it is hard to ignore Tax TV. We do not want to be in obscurity. We want to get to a point where we are able to command national visibility. We are able to command national attention. We are able to command. You see how they say Coca-Cola is so popular. You don't even need an advertisement for Coca-Cola, even though Coca-Cola advertises. But the reality is that it is as popular as anything, right? We want to be able to grow in leaps and bounds. We want to be able to move in terms of audience, viewership. We want to be able to grow in terms of impact, such that Tax Television would be hard to ignore. What would Tax Television success mean for Tax Television? Essentially, it means partnership. Acquisition of partnerships. Today, we're already in partnership with a couple of state governments to be that media-led tax advocacy consultancy that is able to take the information and knowledge about taxes to the grassroots. You know, most of the times we are lost in the fact that taxes are not only collected at federal level.
Yeah.
Taxes are also collected at state level. In fact, there are taxes for local government levels.
Yeah.
It is also important that we be able to wear these conversations into the narrative, to be able to demystify the fact that taxes are not just about CIT, that is company income taxes, or about VAT. There are more to taxes.
Okay.
There are more to taxes than just a CIT or a VAT or capital gains tax or a PAYE. There are major other state level taxes. For instance, you realize that by virtue of the workings of the JRD, that is the Joint Revenue Board, there is now an introduction of what they call economic development levies.
Oh.
People are not even aware yet today.
Okay.
When we measured the level of awareness of what is known today as economic development levy, there is just a handful of people who are aware that such a tax exists, because there has been a fixation, undue fixation to federal taxes, whether we're talking about PE or all the kinds of federal taxes that exist. So what success will mean for us is also entrenching partnership, so that we're able to work with state government at different levels, at different sectors, to be able to communicate the objective of tax, communicate the vision of tax, communicate the goal of tax, so that people who should be paying taxes should understand why they should pay tax, what they should pay tax for, and the processes to which they need to make their taxes. And I'm happy that a couple of our segments are focused on this. So in Tax Television, we have a segment called How To.
Okay. How to pay your tax.
How to pay your taxes, which is a segment that is dedicated to demystifying critical processes of tax compliance, critical processes that leads you to fulfilling your obligation as a taxpayer. People do not know how to generate their TIN. A lot of people do not know how to generate their tax ID today. Now, in that segment, our job will be able to demystify the processes leading to your TIN tax ID generation. People do not know how to file their taxes for different tax types. People think that VAT tax filing is the same thing as PAYE tax filing.
Oh, no.
The requirements for filing those classes of tax are different and very unique. You must understand these things, otherwise you'll be running foul to the law.
Sure.
So it's important. So part of what we want to be able to ensure is that we're able to entrench some level of partnership that is able to give us, leverage into the subnationals, give us leverage to the homes and houses of our potential taxpayers. Those are the things that success will mean for us.
Interesting. And speaking of what Mr. Hassan has said, so in relation to culture, so what this means is that the barrage of misinformation we have, especially on social media, people who claim to be experts will now begin to communicate the right information as a result of the education that will be coming from Tax TV on a regular basis, and building that whole culture, so much so that a random social media handler can just come and talk about tax without preparation, but understands the fundamentals of tax. Yeah, because the new tax law doesn't put any cap for tax, any age bracket. As far as you're earning an income, you should pay your tax. So that means anybody, be you in secondary school, in university, you should understand what tax is and what you can do.
To also buttress that point that Hassan made, it might interest you to know that government has taken a position on that.
Okay.
Today, there is an expectation of the law that every tax practitioner must be profiled by government.
Oh.
So whether you are in the advocacy service or in the service that provides filing assistance or tax advisory to taxpayers, government is now expecting that you come forward and profile yourself. Why are they doing that? It is because there is a lot of agents of misinformation masquerading themselves as tax professionals.
Exactly.
Misleading people, ill-informing people, and making the drive towards a better tax-oriented society a more elusive reality. What government expect, therefore, is that if you are indeed a tax practitioner, if you are indeed a tax professional, you must come now and register with government. So it is Gone are the days when this industry is no longer regulated. It is now a highly regulated environment.
That's what I wanted
to
to
the
know.
effect that you must profile yourself, you must put yourself forward and define your competence level, define your sector that you are involved in, your specialization, and define your modus operandi, so that people, when you issue out a statement, when you issue out an information or a communique, people are well guided, taxpayers are well guided. And for me, I think that is a major plus.
Interesting. So moving to the final question to draw the curtain for this session. I think this is something that people will be really interested in. So what are the plans to ensure that Tax TV communicates to every Nigerian? You know, like you pointed out during when you were talking about the target audience, you will so agree that the target audience doesn't just understand English. That's the first category I'm speaking about. So we have the audience that do not understand English. That's the first category. Then we also have an audience that doesn't understand legalese. People who are not familiar with all the legal aspects of the law and of things like that. So what's the plan to break down tax for every individual? I'd like to hear from both of you, but start with Mr. Hassan, please.
Okay, I think, the most important thing prior to, the birth of Tax TV, as you're aware, we've been in the space to providing solutions. And one of the core targets or cardinal principles in optimizing revenue for our partners is that ease in understanding the different processes that are involved in, tax or revenue payments. Most of this include, you have maybe you enter to the particular, maybe in the corners, there are a lot of non-English speakers.
Exactly.
How do you communicate to them? You have to translate everything in the local language that they understand. Today, the English we're speaking on this channel today, there are certain, people that grasp the English language, but there may be technical jargons or, legal words we might throw in and out that a lot of the people, maybe probably within the informal sector, may not be able to grasp or understand. So the whole point is to understand and make sure that we have segments that are tailored to particular regions, to, particular languages. Is like Kachi, I think, mentioned earlier, Tax TV is, while there's a demography that is a target, but it's almost for everybody and everyone. So of course there will be regional tailored segments, language-based segments, age group-based segments, industry-based segments for each of the particular industries to understand because for me, being in the health sector, the taxes and levies that are applied might not be the same for somebody that is within the education sector. So, we're going to go granular in demystifying all of this, information that is particularly targeted, both language, industry, region, demography, and what have you. So, in essence, Tax TV will be delivering a lot of programs in all the major languages in the country. It will deliver programs particularly to the pain points of certain, regions, because there might be, like Kachi mentioned earlier, the economic power within a particular region in the country is not the same as other particular region. So a particular region within the country, let's say, for example, the tax knowledge in Lagos is far more, wider than down in Kebbi or in Adama or what have you. So, the bridge, the gap you are bridging in Lagos is not as wide as the gap you are bridging across the country. So again, within the particular regions, there will be targeted programs to make sure they address the particular issues that are basically bewildering them in those regions.
Interesting. So for you, Mr. Kachi, briefly.
Yeah, so just to I'm sure that Hassan has laid a very good foundation
Exactly.
with regards to this question. Speaking to the fact that we are culturally oriented. We are able to translate our content to the last mile, irrespective of the language. So we are not having any language barrier. So this content that's been generated will service a Hausa speaking environment, a Yoruba speaking environment, and all the major languages in Nigeria. We're able to transcribe and serve them, effectively. But moving beyond that, one of the things that we have also done in terms of program structuring is that we have a vast array of presenters, specific industry, specific demographic focused presenters that will be speaking to the different issues, that will be speaking to the different biases, that will be speaking to the different mindsets, using different segments of programs as designed within the ecosystem called Tax Nigeria or Tax Television. Now, what that means is that if you are a Gen Z who is struggling, who is in a gig economy, we have a resource person that understands your pain points, that is able to transcribe the demands of the law into your daily, actionable, livable life. What that means also is that if you're a civil servant, a government worker, we have a segment that is led by somebody who has experienced civil service, who understands the rudiments, the crucibles of civil service, and is able to deliver in alignment with your lived realities as a civil servant. What it also means is that we have a segment that is focused on SMEs, who is able to, an expert-led conversation that is able to draw inferences from the law, realities from the law, and deliver specifically to the demands of an SME operator. So that's part of the things that we have done. Moving forward, another thing that we are doing to make sure that we are speaking to everybody is that we are big of impact assessment. We are big on feedbacks. So we go out on the field regularly in the marketplace, in the traditional or specialized markets, and we are able to feel the pulse, to understand the concerns of the people. We have a program, a segment called Open Mic within the Tax Television, where people are able to call in, and see and express their views. On the basis of those views, we're able to congregate all of the ideas and identify the salient pain points that is consistent across many colors, and we're able to address them. The idea there is that we are not just speaking to the roof or playing to the gallery. We are speaking to the real pains that people are experiencing. We are speaking to the real concerns that people are after. We don't want to be a tax television that is detached from the society. We want to be a tax television that is entrenched into the society, so that we are able to deliver on the vision that we have. Remember, the vision is to reduce tax disinformation, is to be able to be that advocate that is able to demystify some of the myths, some of the ambiguities of the law, such that at the end of the day, we are all working in partnership with government, we are working in partnership with the people, and we are working in partnership with every tax entity that is in the Nigerian fiscal space.
Interesting. Thank you so much. So as we draw the curtain right now, what I'd just like to ask is, what do you expect from people? How can they contact Tax TV, basically?
Well, today, if you look at how technology has evolved, even in Nigeria, you go to the farthest or the remotest of the areas within the country, you find a local farmer with, a functional Android phone and on Facebook, watching the news. Or today, most people, gone are the days where at 6 o'clock in the morning you'd hear our fathers with their radio listening to the news. Today everything is on Facebook. And then with the demography we're targeting, everything today is on TikTok, is on Snapchat, is on Instagram. You have all the different platforms, YouTube, that all these people are using. And like Kachi earlier mentioned, Tax TV is supposed to have, a feedback mechanism, an engagement mechanism where, we're able to understand the pain points of the populace and are able to address them additionally. So it's an open channel. Kachi mentioned the open mic program where you can call in. We'll have our social media pages that are all out there across all the platforms. Of course, there are the comment session, the feedback sessions, the email addresses that will be there. So we welcome public engagement. It's Tax TV is all about conversation, demystifying a lot of misinformation, communicating and creating that culture in, having that confidence for our younger generations and even the ones that have the tax knowledge gap to actually, stand up and have these conversations as opposed to everybody sitting back at the back bench and just going with the general public opinion. So we should all encourage ourselves to now demystify a lot of information that we see in public. Like, when the new tax law came, one of the most common misinformations is that government will start taking money from our accounts, and that in itself, that misconception brought to me the understanding that there is a significant tax knowledge gap. People do not understand the process of if government, you have to file. The only time government will contact you is when you do not file, or when you're filing it's questionable. And even of that, if you clarify the information, it takes a long process before there will ever be a lien in your account or government goes ahead to directly debit your account. So that lack of understanding is what we want to breach at Tax TV. So that communication, encourage that communication when there's a general information, or when, like you said, not to throw a jab at influencers, but we come in, we speak about tax, but there's a lot of miscommunication in that. So if you hear a said particular influencer say certain information about tax, go ahead, go to Tax TV, go to different channels, verify that information for yourself before actually consuming it and working for it. So we encourage public interaction through the different channels, and we're very much happy to be communicating with the public.
All right, so thank you so much, Mr. Kachi. Thank you so much, Mr. Hassan. So you've heard it right here on Tax Gauge. Tax TV is here to bridge that gap that exists between you and the tax authorities, or the government, as the case may be. So what we are saying right now is this: Tax TV is live, available on all the social media handles as written on your screen. So what they are saying is subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow them on all social media handles, so that whenever you come against a tax ambiguity, all you have to do is slide into the DM and ask your questions. Tax TV is more than ready to respond to you. So you've heard it right here on Tax Gauge. I'm your host, Halil Rain, and this will be me signing off for today. Thank you.